Hey everyone, in this video we're going to be going over the differences between being a full-time software engineer and a contractor at a company. Now, a lot of people don't know that there is a difference, but depending on which one you are, things like your taxes, how much you make, and how long you're going to spend at that company will be changing. So if you find value in this video, please remember to leave a comment to help so much with the YouTube algorithm. And we're going to talk about the pros and cons. And my experience personally is that I've done both. So I'm going to talk about what I liked from each one of them. And at the end of the day, it really comes down to preference depending on what you want your career to look like as a software engineer and overall the type of lifestyle that you want to live. So let's talk about the difference between the two. Say you had a website, and in order to launch that website, you had to fix 2 or 3 bugs that came up. Now, you're probably not going to hire a full-time employee because when you hire a full-time employee, there are a ton of things you have to worry about. Things like 401k matching, things like a severance package if you ever choose to fire them, providing benefits like health insurance, dental insurance, and the list goes on. But to get a freelancer, it's a lot easier. You just make a job posting on something like Upwork, and then you go ahead and hire someone for, let's say, for example, $50 an hour, or just pay them $500 to fix all the bugs. And once it's done, you part ways and they part ways. So you are pretty much set to go and move on with the launch of your website. When a company hires a full-time employee, what they are saying is that they are willing to invest in that person over the long term. And it shows with things like benefits, for example. A lot of the time, full-time employees will get a lot of different benefits, especially at top tech companies. Things like $1,200 a year to cover things like a gym membership or any gym equipment through a fitness stipend. Things like massage therapy or physiotherapy being covered up to a certain amount. Of course, things like dental insurance, 401k matching, health insurance, and the list goes on. Now, another big benefit of being a full-time employee at a company is the idea of stock options. Now, a lot of companies will give you stock options, especially in the tech world, that contractors just don't get. And what that usually means is, as a contractor, you get a higher base salary, aka you're making more per hour, but the majority of people that have been working at top tech companies, any FANG company like Google, the majority of their money is actually coming from the stock options that they got that vest over the course of 4 years. And what that means is, if you started today at Google, they will reserve $100,000 of their stock at the current price of their stock. And as time goes on and their stock goes up, they will have a vesting plan where, let's say, for example, over the course of your next 4 years at Google, you will get that initial amount that they saved for you, 25% every single year, until you are at the end of your 4th year, where you will have received 100% of that, which you could then go and obviously sell if you wanted to, since the stock price has probably gone up since then. And there are also refreshers, for example, if you get promoted or if you get a bonus, where they will give you more stocks, and that will also vest over the next 4 years. So a lot of big companies will incentivize their employees to stay at their company through things like stock vesting and making sure that they can't pull out, or else they will lose all the money that they've been sitting there and building up in stock. Another luxury of working full-time is the fact that you can climb the corporate ladder if that's something you want to do. You can get promoted from a software engineer 1 to software engineer 2. There's actually career growth, and you can move up in the company as the years go on. Whereas a consultant, it feels very parallel in the sense that I might work a year and a half as a senior engineer at one company, and then my contract will end, and then I just start at the next company and I'm still at the same level, even though my rate might have gone up a tiny bit. Now, some of the cons of being a full-time engineer at a company. One of them includes the fact that a lot of the times you might not be able to control what you are working on. Sometimes we get a job, and a lot of the times it's not going to say exactly what we're going to be working on. So for example, you might start as an engineer, as a junior engineer at a company, and they might at one point in time need you to work on React, and you love React. And then 2 months later, they no longer need you to be working on React, and all of a sudden you're doing a bunch of Postgres backend work and you absolutely hate it. And I've seen a lot of my friends that work at these tech companies get stuck doing work that they don't exactly enjoy. And a lot of the times, if the work needs to be done, they're not going to have the option to just get up and move to a different tech stack because it's what needs to be done, and you are a full-time engineer at that company. Now, along with that, it can also be really hard and difficult to to leave those companies, they don't call them golden handcuffs for nothing. And sometimes it'll feel like you're sort of trapped where you don't want to leave because you have stocks that are vesting or 401k matching that don't actuate until 3 years down the line. And you could find yourself in a situation where you're unhappy at a company for a very long period of time. And they just have so many incentives built in to not leave that it makes it really hard to just untether yourself and get out of there. And that brings us to some of the pros of the consulting life. One of which is you pretty much have complete control over what you are working on, in the sense that if you really love doing React, you don't ever have to work for someone that doesn't need React work. And as soon as they stop needing React work and they ask you to work on something else, you always have the option of just moving on to a new client. Another big benefit is for a lot of the times you get to choose your own rate. So your rate is going to have to be a lot higher than what a base salary would be. So for example, if you work at a tech company and your base salary is $100,000 a year, that roughly translates to around $50 an hour. As a consultant, you want to charge more than that because you do not have the added benefit of getting benefits and things like stock options. So you need to charge a bit extra in order to make up for that. Now, on top of that, you also have the added benefit of choosing what to do with your taxes. A lot of the times as a consultant, if you're working for a company, what the optimal play to do is to create another company for yourself called Anthony Incorporated, and then to charge the company you're working for through your company. Then you have the opportunity to either choose whether you want to pay yourself a salaried income or a dividend income. Now, depending on which one you want is going to be a completely complex question that you should talk to your accountant about, and it depends completely on what your financial goals are and what your finances look like in general. But just having that freedom can be a very, very big tool, and I found that extremely helpful in my case as well. Now, another cool benefit is you get to arbitrage skills, and what I mean by that is if you are someone that loves to learn new skills all the time and you're interested in the latest trending things, like for example, if right now you were interested in Web3 development, well, you could take a couple months, learn how Web3 works, start off with a couple of smaller clients that need very basic work done, build up your skill set through that, and then you can start moving into bigger and bigger clients. And that's the route I chose to take with React. At the beginning of my React career, I was still pretty much a noob, but I took on a lot of really small contracts that were very basic and I knew I could deliver for the client, and that helped me learn a bunch. I was gaining experience and making money while I was learning, which is very powerful. And I think if you're someone that wants to sort of pursue the highest paying skill that is out there right now, then that's also a really good opportunity for you to do. There are a lot of people that end up working at big tech companies doing very, very, very esoteric niche stuff that they can't really translate. And that sort of is one of the things that locks them into the place that they work at, the fact that you don't really get any transferable skills depending on what you're doing. All right, now that you know the differences in the pros and cons between the two, let's talk about the differences in actually landing a full-time job versus a freelancer job. Now, to get a full-time job, a lot of the times the things you're going to have to do in the interview, aka data structures and algorithms, aka leak code problems, aren't going to be very relevant to what you are doing, at least not immediately. Chances are you spend a couple of months training for data structures and algorithms problems, and then you get a job as a junior engineer, and then you're doing front-end development or back-end development, and you're learning about databases and stuff like that. It's sort of the opposite for getting a contractor role, where a lot of it is they only care about whether or not you can handle what they need to do. So if, for example, they have bugs on their website, they're not going to care if you can, do the traveling salesman question. They're going to care about whether or not you've done React before, what your experience is in it. And a lot of the times, a big portion of landing a contractor job is pretty much just knowing how to present yourself and sell yourself while you're in the interview with them. Even some of the smartest developers that I've seen, a lot of them don't really know how to sell themselves, and what that results in is a lot of mismatched confidence from the actual person that's trying to hire versus the actual developer, and it doesn't really turn out well sometimes. So honestly speaking, I think someone can go from zero knowledge of programming to landing their first consulting job within around 6 months if they just focused on something like learning JavaScript and then learning React. But if you wanted to get a full-time job at Google, I think if you were starting from nothing, it would take a lot longer because you have to learn the fundamentals of programming. Then you have to learn data structures and algorithms and practice it a ton, which is non-trivial. And I would say it would at fastest maybe take you like 6 months to like 18 months in order to go down the full-time path at a big tech company from absolute scratch if you dedicated all your time to it. And that path might not be for everyone. Sometimes you just want to get your hands dirty, you learn by doing, and you want to just jump into working with actual clients. And if so, maybe the contractor role might be more beneficial for you in that sense. And on that note, there's a lot of questions that people have when it comes to becoming a freelancer. The biggest one is, how do they start and land clients, and whether or not it's unstable. And the answer to that is essentially you have to start somewhere. So whether you have a relative that knows a friend of a friend that needs a website done or any type of work done, or you want to just sign up on Upwork and slowly start making a portfolio for yourself and working with clients, even if it's at less of a rate than you initially wanted to, that's always a good way to get your foot into the door. There's definitely not a shortage of software jobs out there. So once you have a bit of a portfolio built up for yourself on a lot of these sites like Upwork or TopTal or even Gun.io for the more advanced developers here, then you should be able to find jobs at ease, and they're probably going to be more and more long-term the more experienced you get. And I have some referral links down in the description below if you wanted some links to TopTal and Gun.io. Two great platforms that I have used before in the past. I've also used Upwork, so I highly recommend it, especially for people that are just beginning. Now, the other question is, do you have to be extroverted in order to deal with clients all the time? And the answer is sort of yes and no. You have to be able to talk to a client and understand what it is that they are looking for from a developer. A lot of the times, the bigger issues in consulting jobs come from communication issues. So for example, you maybe didn't understand exactly what it is that the client wanted, or the client might have had some unrealistic expectations that never got cleared up early. Now, all that said, like I said at the beginning of the video, it is completely up to you whether or not you want to do consulting or full-time. The path that worked for me personally is not having to choose between either of them and trying out each one individually. So I started off as a consultant, and then I started working as a full-time employee in Silicon Valley. And then after a bit of that, I left and became a consultant again. And I found that being a consultant was a lot more conducive to what I wanted in terms of lifestyle, and it was also a lot better for me financially. So that was the decision I ended up making, but I encourage you all to do your own research and get out there and try different things out. And just as a reminder, if you found value in this video, please consider leaving a comment. It helps so much with the YouTube algorithm. I'd love to hear what topics I can cover next that would appeal to whatever it is you're looking for in terms of getting a developer job, or whether it's preparing for interviews or actually doing well once you get the job. Anything like that, let me know, and I will see you guys in the next video.